But as an icebreaker, we always start off the session where we do a little bit of a debate and we ask people their views and opinions on something. So Prof. Klopper and myself were really thinking about how we could end off the year. And I think looking back on the year, possibly one of the biggest impacts to most businesses and to most individuals and entrepreneurs has definitely been around the digital transformation. And I want to say the ambiguity connected to it, because I think a lot of people believe that if you just implement systems and processes and you put a lot of technology in place, that you've actually, metamorphosized your digital transformation. And I think we've come to really understand that this whole digital transformative environment is quite ambiguous for a lot of reasons. I think on the one hand, we have what we would term in the digital theoretical side as a lot of digital natives, who are those that were born into digitized worlds, and millennials, etc. And then you have digital immigrants, which is most of us that were born prior to 1990, and certainly in the 80s and before, who are actually considered digital immigrants and are often having to learn and understand the cultural aspects around digital. So today what I want to put out there is a little bit of a challenge. The Harvard Business Review ran a very interesting article recently. In fact, it was actually yesterday. And the article's titled How to Navigate the Ambiguity of the Digital Transformation. But what is most fascinating about the article is there's two parts to it. I just wanted to find the one question. But it is challenging leaders within the industry, and it's raising questions around something very important, which is how do you as a leader navigate a transformation from what you know to what you have yet to define. And I think that this is really critical, because we could take a really reductionist view on digitization and basically say once you've got the things in place and you get people to understand them, that transformation has occurred. But I think that this is quite an elementary view on it, because what we have seen in the world is massive partnerships merging. In the article, for example, they speak about the partnership between the very prestigious racing car Bugatti with VW, because of the fact that so many of the systems had been self-built. And the supercars, as in Bugatti, needed to really have a deeper understanding around some of the more, the processes around electric cars and more environmentally friendly cars, etc. So very unlikely partnerships forming. So I guess my question to you, and maybe it's something more around what you've experienced, how have you seen or worked within an environment where you've seen a digital transformation of sorts, in some particular way that you may have seen some kind of digitized transformation, and how you think that you or your organization has navigated this? And when you give your view, I'd like you to tell me if you think that you are a digital native or if you are a digital immigrant, as the theoretical processes around digitization often refer. And so you don't have to give away your age. You can just say if you think that you are a digital native or a digital immigrant. So I'll start off by saying that one of the things, for example, at Da Vinci is that for those of you that are students with us and joining us today, we've really made quite remarkable strides in terms of being fully functionally online. But some of the things, and I see we have got some lecturers here, Mark, I see you joined us, that we have found is that it is a massive digital immigration for our lecturers, because a lot of people rely on their charisma as lecturers and as orators and as public speakers. They really do rely on their face-to-face kind of way that they deliver a message. And to now deliver it in very virtual environments, even now, I'm sitting and staring at a bunch of gray circles with nothing much on. I don't see many people that have pictures on. And yes, I could absolutely ask you to turn your cameras on and wave hello, but a lot of the time people either don't do that, or alternatively they do it and then say, well, we've got bandwidth issues and we've got to turn it off, etc. So it is quite a different space. So we have certainly found that the immigration of lecturers into the digital space has sometimes meant that it's not about lecturing in the same way, but it's a complete transformation of a digitized lecturer versus a face-to-face lecturer. So I'll open the floor. Anyone want to comment around how you think you have transformed from a digitized perspective, either yourself or within your organizations. Some of the pros and cons, and the question I posed to you earlier being, what do you think you've come to know, and how do you think you're going to deal with what you still need to learn or you still need to define within your organization? Please feel free to unmute your mics, just talk freely, because this is meant to be a roundtable kind of debate, a cooperative debate. Anyone?
I was just thinking, there's some aspects that I feel like an immigrant in, and there's some aspects that I feel like a native in. So merging onto fully online teaching has definitely been a migration. But being on email, being on a cell phone has come very naturally to me. So watching that migrate over the years has been very interesting for me as a reflection. But I think there's some things that still make sense. Finding new ways to connect with people as people and get to know them as people has been really important to build a sense of online community for me. So not just focusing on the task stuff or on the business stuff, but actually taking the time to get to know where people are, what devices they're using, how they are, and things like that.
So Heather, if you don't mind me sharing, because Heather, you are someone that I've been on the receiving end of some of your online stuff, and you do it particularly well in terms of transformed. So small little things like I've sat in on one of Heather's discussions. She will start off a session by saying, could everyone just turn on their cameras and wave hello and just see our faces? And then she will say, could you raise a hand to wave hello, so that she can see that people know how to use the icons. Well, she'll say, let's give the class a little bit of love, just so that they can see how to use the different icons. And I'm just saying that's a very small example, Heather, but I think that you've really sort of mimicked around Mode 2 in a really positive way. But what I want to add to this is,
it's also been experimentation. We moved so fast into online teaching at one point that it was try something to see if it worked and get feedback.
Great. So I think feedback's a massive component, but something else I want to speak to, because this obviously isn't, Heather's speaking from her business perspective, which is connected to teaching. But I want to point out that successful digital transformation is quite hard to predict. It's very difficult to plan. But it's also often the result of things like you spoke to, Heather, new customer interactions, new combination of talent and teams, because different people show up in so many different ways. And like I said to you with that Bugatti and VW example, it's often very unexpected partnerships and alliances that you may never have thought would have worked and progressed. And I think that it is something that is constantly evolving, and it is definitely influenced by algorithms and androrhythms, because I think if you don't have the human element and you don't make people feel like they're connected on a humane basis, you will have issues around that. So it's obviously got to be aggregated in a way that there is some kind of collective behavior, which I think you're speaking to, Heather, in terms of trial and error. But it's, again, very systemic, and that's why it connects so well to Da Vinci, because the thing about digital transformations is that it is about that the sum of the parts makes up the whole, because the entire holistic experience and the introduction of technology devices, the introduction of platforms, etc., integrated with various things, is what makes up the transformation. Prof. Klopper, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I think this is a very interesting conversation, and part of this challenge is to have deep, meaningful conversations. So for me, it's part of the transformation is also the engagement that's sit behind that, and the level that we really push it to the limits. And I kind of get the idea that quite often we use bells and whistles, and it's all about the skills, and we actually don't ask the strategic questions, say what are the real capabilities that we will need in this space. And in doing that, you bring tools forward, but one should never see that as an either or. It's a horses for courses, how this can complement the engagement. And I think the reality for many companies thinking about post-COVID, they almost are dealing with the animal they don't know how to engage with, and this thing ran away with them, and that's the danger of technology. So either you embrace it fully and you use it and you integrate it, or it run away with you. And I think that for me is a realization which many companies struggle with, and I almost pluck the front end with all bells and whistles, but it's a shallow conversation. There's no deep discourse behind the engagement.
I think you've made a valid point, and I think something else that's become quite interesting as an Institute of Higher Learning is that we're hearing from industry that their expectation is just like we used to prepare students, to go out into the world and to, be work ready, that they're expecting that we are, as institutions of learning, that we will be training and coaching students to be able to business-wise operate within an organizational context in an online environment, in a work from home style, in a flexible work environment, that the work ethic and the understanding of how to navigate these situations from a strategic perspective will actually come from the universities. And I certainly say to all those people in industry on a continual basis, it has to be a cooperative engagement, because it cannot just come from one side, because many of us may have actually found it difficult to ourselves navigate the online space. Things, for example, like if you do your emails while you're doing this, or those of you that are sitting and doing work now, you are not concentrating in the same way. Just like if you come into a meeting and you sit on a cell phone or you sit on a laptop, you won't engage in the same manner. And I have tested this amongst colleagues at Da Vinci and myself as well, trying to multitask. Just like you don't multitask in a meeting, you should not. And then you make a faux pas by, while you're having a meeting with your boss, you send them an email. And I've had that happen to me and have done it. And I've come to understand that if you really want to immerse yourself, as Prof. Klopper has spoken to, we really need to be able to understand that this is our new reality. Prof. Anderson always speaks about the fact that, speaking about artificial intelligence and algorithms and androrhythms. And the reality is, guys, that in my view, having moved into this digitized space, although it's not from an AI perspective, I do believe that we have become online characters. I mean, we have a joke at Da Vinci that people that started in the fifth, in level 5 lockdown of Da Vinci, we used to call them coronials. And it was because they started in Corona, in COVID, and we had never met them in person. So we had only, and Prof. Klopper was actually one of them, that we used to call him a coronial and say, oh, well, hopefully one day we get to see what you are like in real life. But you create this online persona. You project yourself in a certain way. And when you physically see the person, so for example, you don't see my whole self. You don't see my whole presence. You don't see actually, because if you see now, I actually speak with my hands. So you can see my shoulders are moving, and that's why I often lift my hands, because you can see my shoulders moving, but I know that part of my speaking style is to use my hands. So it's lots of different nuances. And I'm speaking about digitization across the board, but I'm bringing in things like interpersonal communication, the connections we make, the collecting and connecting the dots as well. So before we close off, anyone else have any experiences of this, or you like it or you don't like it, you've embraced digital transformation, you do find it quite ambiguous and difficult to deal with, you can understand why all these crazy partnerships are coming about around it? Babongile, did you want to speak?
That at a personal level, I've embraced the digital transformation and all that it comes with. And I can say that there are actually quite interesting experiences with it. Having to do everything just in one place. I think for me last year, it was quite interesting that I could be into different international conferences, which previously it could have required that the minister approve this and that, the entire process, bureaucratic process that gets to be involved. But in just one day, you are in Tokyo, Japan, and you are doing what you could have done in any way. So I think for me, it has made life easier to a certain extent, but there are also funny experiences that, as you indicate, that you're just seeing your shoulder. We actually, to be frank, we don't know what's going on down there below the shoulders. Probably.
I am actually wearing a dress today, but what I did want to laugh about is the other day, one of the institutes gave a very fascinating lecture where the lecturer specifically wore a suit and tie on the top, and he was wearing board shorts and slip-flops at the bottom. And it was to teach students exactly what you're speaking about, that, we don't know all these things. And yes, many people just put on a nice smart top, or they wear a scarf and then they've got their pajamas underneath.
Definitely.
Gibson, I saw you wanted to
men, they just put a shirt and a tie and a jacket, but
exactly.
just before that, it's just the pajamas.
But just be very careful, because, you know, people have gotten fired when they tip their camera and all of a sudden people see a little bit down yonder. So, yes, we do need to be cautious of that as well. But I think you make a very pertinent point, Dr. Mkhize, because one of the other things is about the internationalization, globalization debates that we've been having for years and years about borderless societies. And I do feel that the digitization of things has certainly opened borders in many ways, because I do think often, besides time taken to travel and expenses taken to travel, I do often think that people don't always get what is, from a financial perspective, what is needed out of those. And when you have these online debates and discourses, and it doesn't seem like you're trying to disconnect by connecting, if I make sense, you actually are able to harness really good relationships. We ourselves have seen a lot of more internationalized partnerships coming about because people are much more open to do business through digitization. Gibson, I see that your hand is up.
And now that you touched on my favorite subject, digital transformation, I take it that digital transformation has pushed the frontiers of cultural transformation within organization. Since level 5 lockdown, we've seen changes in the mode of how managers or leaders perceived their junior employees. Yeah, what it did, among other things, in my view, it created self-managing work teams or self-directed work teams. Management or leaders had to develop a new form of trust relationship with employees. You would find, example, a manager coming down, I would say, for a lack of a better word, coming down, groveling to the junior employee, because the junior employee must furnish a certain information to the leader. And you find that the junior employee feel guilt that if I don't do it, in certain time, it has pushed that level of motivation, amongst the teams in organization. So the way in which, or the mode of doing business or leader or conducting business with it and leading has changed a great deal. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Gibson. I absolutely, agree with you completely. And I want to end off by saying two things. The first being that trust is a massive part of it, and self-directed learning, which, as you know, is something very critical at Da Vinci and what we really focus a lot on in the student journey. But I think that one of the interesting things that the Harvard Review article ends with, and I will ask Prof. Klopper to just pop the link into the chat so you guys can see the whole article. They end off by basically alluding to the fact that we need to be investing in capabilities and competencies, so that to plan for an unpredictable future, it's counterintuitive to go to the familiar. We actually have to innovate and go to the unfamiliar. And I think that this, thanks, Prof. Klopper, and I think that this really links nicely to Dr. Babongile Mkhize, who's our next speaker, because she's going to be speaking to us today about harnessing fresh ideas and building innovative capabilities through inclusiveness. You all did receive her, her profile, but there are a couple of things I wanted to say about Dr. Mkhize. Not only is she a Da Vinci alumnus, but her contribution to Da Vinci through our nonprofit organization, TT100, to our council. She's one of our board members at the Da Vinci Institute. She is honestly a remarkable human being. She's been at the South African Department of Science and Technology for over 10 years, and she can speak to globalization because she's first worked with Africa in bilateral and multilateral cooperation. Later, she served with overseas organizations, so the bilateral cooperation. She covers regions in the Americas, both North, South, and the Caribbean, as well as Asia. What is very interesting about her is, although her postgraduate qualifications are very much focused on business, for those of you that don't know, she actually has got a background in microbiology and chemistry, which she actually holds an honors degrees in. But I think for me, Dr. Mkhize, the thing that I love about you the most is your cooperative ability to do things. So not only do you merge a massive partnerships between science, technology, and innovation between South Africa and various countries, both in our own continent of Africa, but particularly in the Americas and the Australia and Asia Pacific, where you actually merge Africanization, the decolonization of Africa in science, technology, and innovation with other countries and give them such a great understanding. And I think we've seen such a massive issue with this whole outbreak now of the new variant of COVID, where we've had a lot of Africans letting their voices be heard to speak about the fact that we as the continent should not always have to be punished when we are innovators. And Dr. Mkhize, I think that you always let your voice be heard in a highly intelligent, in a highly cooperative manner. You're not only one of the smartest people, but one of the most cooperative people that I know. And so it's indeed an honor for you to be addressing us today. I introduce to you Dr. Babongile Mkhize.
Okay, thank you, Myla, for such an introduction, even though I think you just exaggerated a bit. I'm not one of the smartest people, I think. And thank you to Prof. Klopper for inviting me here. Actually, if I can talk about someone who doesn't give up, I think that's Prof. Klopper, because he persuaded me since 2019. I tried to have many excuses not to do this, but I totally failed. So big ups to Prof. Klopper for convincing me to do this today. And I'm hoping that I'm not going to disappoint you in the end. Just to add a little bit, Mala, on your introduction, what people don't know is that I've got special love for mathematics. Actually, that was my first love at school and throughout my school life. And also at university, I did a bit of mathematics, probably up to my second year of BSc. But then I had to leave it because at some point you have to prioritize in life, which is what I'm going to probably talk about today. This is what I'm going to try to capture today. It's going to be the introduction. And we're going to look at the bigger picture. Why do we have to do what we do in terms of innovation? Why should we be doing that? And then I'll zoom closer to inclusive innovation and then get into the gist of the topic of today, building innovative capabilities. As a way of introduction, I just want us to look at why do we need to harness ideas in the first place. Someone who's in the innovation space will appreciate the fact that any idea and every idea could matter at some point, provided there's a conducive environment, and any idea and every idea could lead to productive and sustainable innovative solutions. The key issue there is to have conducive conditions and environment, which I think we will look into it as we move along. What do we mean by conducive conditions and environment? That's what we sum up into what we call innovative capability, which is the ability to identify new ideas and create an enabling environment to transform them to innovative products, could be services, and even processes. Innovative capability, I would say it can occur at any level, different levels, at a national level, which is country level, organizational or institutional level, which is where Da Vinci and other organizations like mine and other organizations where there's a workforce, innovation capability could occur there and could be built there. Also at an individual level or personal level, at a community level as well, where we talk about issues of social innovation. And then why do we need to innovate? Basically, or in general, or in a broad sense, innovation is the driver of socio-economic development in reference to quality and better life for all. And I would say I refer to this, and I always refer to this as the bigger picture. Or this is the vision where if we talk about the reason to innovate and why should we harness idea, really, the bigger picture is socio-economic development, and in the end, quality and better life for all. And then in terms of socio-economic development, that requires a system that can enable, which is more like a platform where socio-economic development should occur. There's a need for a national system of innovation where various levels of innovative capabilities could be built and coexist, meaning that could be at the governmental level, various institutions, individuals and communities that can be role players in the national system of innovation. And socio-economic development also requires an inclusive approach. Hence, innovation and building innovative capabilities should also be inclusive at all levels. Talking about the bigger picture, that's what we call knowledge-based economy, for which most of the developing countries is what they aspire to become. And our country also, South Africa, as one of the developing countries, even though to some people, they think that we are already there, but the truth of the matter, we are not. We're still one of the developing economies. So we also aspire to become a knowledge-based economy. And the knowledge-based economy is typified by high-skilled workforce, for example, increased human capability, knowledge creation and flow, etc. And if we go well as a knowledge-based economy, we might as well find ourselves one day in a space where we are fully industrialized and regarded as one of the first world economies. And according to the OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the knowledge-based economy is characterized by networking. I just want to highlight these important aspects of the topic of today. So KB is characterized by networking among the national system innovation actors, those that I mentioned in my previous slide, government, institutions, individuals, community at large. And inclusiveness, which has merged with the changes in the traditional linear model of innovation, in which innovation is viewed as a process of discovery that proceeds via a fixed and linear sequence of phases, and where it's assumed that innovation begins with new scientific research and then it progresses sequentially through stages of development, production, marketing, and terminates with a successful sale of new products, processes, and services. However, in the contrary, the KBE and a successful one, it should recognize that innovation can stem from many sources and from anywhere. And I want us to mark that one as we move to the next slide. So in knowledge-based economy, which requires the NSI, National System of Innovation, as the main driver, are built. At a national level, we have the government there playing the leading role in creating an enabling environment, or rather playing a leading role in creating a national innovative capability. At an organizational level, it's various institutions, including the Da Vinci Institute and many other educational institutions, the private sector, the NGOs, and so on and so forth. And maybe in other countries that even include churches, they play part in building innovative capabilities. Individuals, for example, we could be talking about scientists, researchers, engineers, artists, in some instances, and even indigenous knowledge holders, our gogos and our grandpas who hold such an enormous knowledge that is not yet untapped and that can contribute into building an innovative capability. And then community at large, as I indicated. Let's look into now our own system and our own country. I indicated that South Africa, as a developing country, we also aspire to become a knowledge-based economy. And that means that at a governmental level, we need a leader or a driver. And at organizational level, all organizations or institutions to make it a point that they make room and they create an environment and build these innovative capabilities and make sure that no one is left behind. Everyone has been given an opportunity to contribute. So at the government, I'm not talking about science and technology department, but I just want to highlight that at the front seat, we have the Department of Science and Technology, previously called that, and now it's called Department of Science and Innovation. I'm still inclined or much inclined into Department of Science and Technology. In South Africa, we have the DSI playing the leading role as a national innovative capability builder, meaning it is the responsibility of the Department of Science and Innovation to identify those opportunities and create an enabling environment for the country to innovate or to build innovative capability. It is also a custodian of the South Africa's National Science and Technology Innovation Policy, and it has a mission to develop, coordinate, and manage a national system of innovation that will bring about maximum human capital sustainable economic growth and improved quality of life for all. And these are the 5 objectives, which I will not go through them one by one, but you can see them there. And then recently, among some of the new developments, there's a new white paper on science, technology, and innovation, which was adopted in March 2019. And it has the 3 focus, which I call them 3 I's. It's innovation, inclusivity, and I think Prof. Klopper would be happy to note that as government, we are in line with the thinking on the ground. And in terms of inclusivity, that is called around alleviating inequalities that exist in the South African society by focusing more on providing support to the previously disadvantaged institutions and individuals, youth and women. So this is the agenda behind inclusivity as far as the government is concerned in the system of innovation. Now, looking into inclusive innovation, thought I should reflect this equation. So when you talk about inclusive innovation, that is innovation, but that is taking account inclusivity. And then we have this system of inclusive innovation. I think I should highlight what are the important issues on inclusivity. That is equal access to opportunities and resources for marginalized people. But I want also to add that it's not only just about people. It's also about sectors and areas that have been previously ignored in the innovation system. I'll make an example of the artist. There's one that I like by the name of Sjava. Sjava is typical Zulu man, traditional, but his music, he's been very innovative in his music because it's a combination of R&B, also with kwaito, at the same time with a taste of maskandi. So for me, when I look at inclusive innovation, that also means paying attention to the sectors that have been previously ignored, but yet they play a huge role in the system of innovation, like the one that I've just made an example with, and the people like Sjava, who are actually contributing so much to the economic development of South Africa with their innovative skills and talent. And then in the entire inclusive innovation, we are supposed to have inclusive economic growth and inclusive economic development as a whole. Now, looking into building innovative capabilities through inclusiveness, what would that mean in reality or in a practical sense? I would say that we'll have to begin with realizing and recognizing that innovation is not just a linear process, but it can stem from anywhere and from many sources, and that means from anyone. And I thought I could just flag some examples which we don't usually, some of them which we don't usually pay attention to. In my experience and observations over past years, innovation is not only as a result of a scientific aspiration or research, but it can be driven by passions and talent, like in the case of Java, I just made an example with. In some cases, it's just curiosity. And in some cases, it's social problems that we have on the ground. In South Africa, as a country, we have many social problems on the ground. Trouble and frustrations. I've encountered young people, especially in the category of grassroots innovators, who have come up with brilliant, innovative ideas as a result of being frustrated out of maybe, for example, being unemployed, or maybe out of, for example, drop out from a university because the parents couldn't afford to pay the rest of the studies fees. And then out of that frustration and the trouble the young person find themselves in, they come up with brilliant, innovative solutions or ideas. Secondly, it also requires considerable communication among different actors. Let's say we talk in the situation of an organization, Prof. Klopper. You need to be open to accommodate and to create an environment for people to be innovative. You need to be appreciative at the same time of their capabilities. It also needs networking and collaborations. No one should be working in silos. And it needs supporting policies in an organization and resources. Or also at a national level, what we do as science and technology is to come up with policies like the new science and technology white paper. That's a new policy that we've put in place to make sure that we support inclusive innovation. And then the environment has to be conducive, or the platform, whatever that you choose to call it. And then I'm going to the last slide as a conclusion. Before I do that, I want to share a story. I once spent time in Singapore for a training in economic diplomacy. That's what they call. I was very much impressed by the country itself. It's a very small country, but that has done amazing things. They don't have land like we do have in South Africa, and they envy us because they think that we've got too much land that we don't know what to do with. What I learned there, one of the things I want to highlight was the fact that they kept on emphasizing that they are not a welfare country, or they are not a welfare economy, but they are a workfare economy or country. It was quite intriguing for me. And as they explained this and getting into details, in Singapore, if you are not working, of which is not the case, there's no one who's not working because they are a work-fair country. They create an environment for everyone, irregardless of the kinds of disabilities that other people may have. For example, if you say your hands are not working, you don't have hands for that matter, they will scrutinize you and they will say you've got feet. What can you do with your feet that can contribute to the economic development of Singapore? They will do a thorough assessment of your health and everything up until they spot one thing that you can do that will contribute to the economy. But apart from that, something that will give you as an individual confidence that you are a member of the Singapore community. And then once they identify the thing, the government will provide incentives and grants to develop that person. If the person have got only feet, they will develop that person and train that person to use his or her feet to do something for a living. Same thing, if you don't have feet but have hands, they will do the same thing. Hence, they emphasize on the fact that they are not a welfare. Instead of giving social grants, they capacitate people, they build capacity for people to stand by themselves and also make a contribution to economic development, which is something that we are lacking in our country. And I would like to think that for innovation as well, building innovative capability, and we are to build an inclusive one, then we need to move away probably from being just a welfare country, but to a workfare, and from workfare to innovation fair. And this is my last slide. I kind of thought that probably Albert Einstein might have had these ideas that everyone and anybody can contribute to economic development. And that's what we call inclusive development. And if I had to talk about inclusive innovation, then anyone and anybody, every idea and any idea could matter. So in that case, if you could judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, which is something that it cannot do, then the fish will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. But if you assess the fish based on its ability to swim and develop and build capacity for the fish on the strength that it has, then the fish will do wonders. So I'm saying in closing, building inclusive innovation capability requires recognizing and capitalizing on the strengths and competencies that we have as people, as a nation, as organizations. And maybe we can be able to move away from being a welfare country to a workforce and then innovation fair. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. I see lots of clapping hands. Any questions for Babongile?
While we're becoming innovative, so there's another point disturbing me. While we're becoming innovative, we're actually growing the economy. I know the doctor mentioned that there's a linear development in our economy. We also need to look at a secular economy, because we have a history of developing things unidirectional, meaning in a linear fashion. Remember, we have limited resources. Having limited resources, while we're developing those resources to satisfy the need of humans, we also should consider the fact that it takes, according to research, it takes about 1.5 years to replenish what we have consumed in a year. So we are playing a catch-up game. So while we're becoming a knowledge economy, we all, among other things, we also need to balance. I know according to Robert Grant, he wrote about this. We have to, while we're creating human capabilities in a way of knowledge economy, we also need to balance the resources that we are creating. Always there should be a balance. Yeah. That should be done in an inclusive manner. Remember, as South Africa, we are in a transformative way whereby inclusion must be the buzzword. Thank you.
Actually, I think Gibson is kind of in agreement with what I said. As I indicated, Gibson, that traditionally, we kind of think that innovation is a linear process. However, if we are to talk inclusivity or inclusive innovation, then we need to recognize the fact that innovation can happen anywhere. It can stem from any source, meaning even from anyone, from any idea. So we are to actually prepare ourselves for such, moving away from that traditional of a linear of innovation being a linear process.
Thank you so much. Your fears were certainly not founded, Babongile. I think you've shown people. Prof. Klopper's got a question for you. Oh, okay, maybe I must stop here.
Thank you, Mara. No, it's just because I'm curious, Dr. Mkhize. So very often, I get the sense people talk about innovation, but they almost make the concept cheap. And I think the first position I have, there's a huge difference between inventions and innovation. And, if you don't actively work on innovation, it also doesn't mean anything. So my question to you is, from your experience, do you think, okay, South Africa, we're very innovative. I think I must make that point. But I get the sense quite often we don't maximize the potential of innovation. We almost sit with it and we almost hide it. And don't bring it to the fore and don't communicate it out. From your experience at DST or DSI, what can we do as a nation to almost, maximize and unlock the full potential of innovation?
Thanks, Prof. I think from where I stand, even though this concept, we haven't defined it very well as a country, the concept of open innovation. I think we need to embrace the concept of open innovation, because I think what makes people to see it with their innovations and not coming out, it's this thing of it's my innovation, and if I go out there, then someone else maybe will steal my idea and da 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 da. So I think as a country, we really need to clearly define the concept of open innovation and then identify the kind of resources that we can put in place and strategies that we can put in place to help people not be afraid to come up with their innovations just because they fear for the idea being stolen. But in the same way, if you're sitting with your idea there and not coming out with it, it serves nobody, not even yourself, not even the nation.
Okay, thank you. No, the open innovation, that makes good sense. Thank you, Babongile. Thanks, Marla.
Thank you so much, Prof. Klopper, and also to Babongile. I think that you've really contributed to the debate, and thank you very much for that.